Everyone, Matt Thomas here. Thanks for watching. So this video is about how to create an end of the year final that's both meaningful and valuable to you and your students. And I'm sending this video out with about 5 weeks left in the school year because now's the perfect time to implement this. Now, before you say, Matt, we already have a department final. We have a district final that we've all agreed to give. And I'll say, great. The way I look at it is this. You've been with your class for 186 days, right? You've delivered lessons that are meaningful and valuable. You've created this incredibly engaging classroom. You've been with your students every single day. So for me, I want to be in control of how we end the school year. I don't want to give a test that was not, well, it was essentially written by someone who's never spent a day in my classroom. I don't want to give that test as my final. Now, that can be a final, that's great, but it's not my final. So I'll also give the department test or the textbook, end of the year test. I'll give that as well as a final, essentially. Not my final, though. I'll usually give that a couple of days before finals day, or maybe at the end of finals day after I've done my final activity, because I want to control how my students see me at the end of the year. I want to control the experience that my students have on the last day that we're all together, essentially. Now, I will share the science behind this at the end of the presentation, because quite honestly, I've noticed that when I start talking science, I tend to put some of you to sleep. So I'll get to the science behind this a little bit later on, but let's get into the how to create this type of final. So I'm a big believer in backwards planning. And when I say that, I look at this. So there's 5 weeks left until the end of the school year. So I would have my calendar out. And the first thing you want to do is first decide what your final is going to be. So I definitely am big into project based because I want my final to be valuable. I want my students to be able to use it or implement it outside of their classroom. I want my students to have something tangible that they can leave my classroom with, so that later on they can find it or discover it again and bring back all these great memories. I want my final to include something from each of the students, so every student has something tangible from everybody in their class. So what I do, and I'll explain what I do, and I'll explain what another teacher does who I'm working with right now. I'll explain what she does as well to hopefully give you some ideas of what you can do. But I will first thing, decide what your final project is. Decide what you can do to highlight all your students. So that's the first thing. Okay, so now let's do this. There's 5 weeks left in the school year. Here's what I would do starting tomorrow. So anything that you're doing now, any instruction you're doing, should be focused on preparing the students for the final. I will say this. Let's say you are giving a cumulative test as your final. I will say any instruction you're doing should all be geared towards preparing the students for that test. Everything that you do should be on the test. Every review thing you do should be on the test. You don't want to lose credibility as a teacher by if the students see things that's on the test that you did not prepare them for, they're going to think my teacher didn't prepare me for this test. Even if you did, months ago, right? You haven't gone over the stuff. You want to make sure you review everything that's going to be on that test. And before you say, Matt, I give a study guide for my students. Great. The downside is if you just give a study guide with no review, you're putting the emphasis or you're putting the responsibility on them for their final, which you go, Matt, that's what we should do. But they're 14 years old. And so they maybe have other things in their life they have to do as well. So I, as the teacher, want to control my student success on my final. So I make sure I go over everything that's going to be on the test. And if you give a study guide, please do make sure that everything you put on the study guide is going to be on your final test. The most frustrating thing I think as a student is when someone studies so hard and only half the stuff is on the test, or worse yet, some of the stuff that was on the test was not on the study guide. So that puts that aside though. So if you're doing a project, everything you're doing now on week 1, remember there's 5 weeks left in the school year, should be focused on preparing for that project. Okay, so let's go to the following week, week 2. This is where you continue, no new instruction, review for the final. So again, focusing more on the less is more, fewer concepts, more opportunity to master them. Don't just stick a random lesson at the end of the year. Review for the final, make sure everything's focused for that final. Okay, so week 3, if you're doing a project, introduce the final project 2 weeks out from the end of the school year. So it's week 3 now. There's 5 weeks left. So week 3, make sure you introduce the final because you're going to need to give the students plenty of time to finish that final relatively stress-free, right? They're going to get stressed from their other classes. So your students will definitely appreciate you if you make this like the least stressful final you can give. And projects tend to do that. So make sure week 3 you're introducing your final, laying it all out for everyone, and then giving the time to start this. Week 4, you're continuing to allow the students to work on their final project. Now, you might think, well, that's a long time. Keep in mind, at the end of the school year, we lose Memorial Day holidays, so it's not as many days as you'd hope or as you'd think. And you want more days for them to work on it, not fewer days, because again, you don't want that stress or pressure, and you don't want students turning in like last minute final projects just so they can turn it in. You want quality work. So that, let me back up a little bit. So again, right now, week 1, any instructions should be geared towards preparing them on the final. Again, less is more. Fewer concepts, more opportunities to master it. Week 2, start reviewing anything for the final project, or that, catch up on anything that you want to reemphasize stuff or reteach something you haven't taught for a little while. Week 3, introduce your final project. Then give the students the days of the week to start working on that. Make sure the project's pretty, kind of a lot of stuff to do in there, so they have they can use that time appropriately. Week 4, continue them working on the final project, knowing you're going to lose a day or two because of Memorial Day. Then comes finals week. Now, if you'd like, you can save some time on finals day, or even like on the shorter day on a Monday, to give like the department final or district final. I would highly suggest saving finals day for your closing activities for you and your class. It's the last day your students will ever see you. You want to make that day valuable and meaningful, and spend some time praising the students, and have them walk out of your class with your last memory they have with you as a positive one. If you want a great idea for an activity, please see my video. I'll put it at the end of this video. I think I titled it Great End of the Year Activity. Please watch that. So save some time to tie everything together, and to highlight this final project that you're doing. So let me show you what a teacher's doing right now. And again, I got her permission to show this. So this teacher right now is a foreign language teacher, and her project is this. So first of all, her final project is that the students create a travel plan. So they're going to be traveling somewhere, and they have to write dialogue and write conversations about how they would the step by step of them traveling. So let me back up and tell you what she's done up to this point. She teaches thematically. She'll do a week or 2 on how to order at a restaurant, and then she'll do scenarios with the students. One's a waiter and the other one's the person ordering, and then they switch. So they're learning the vocabulary and learning the dialogue through practical, things that they can actually apply at restaurants right now. So she has done like weeks on, ordering at restaurants. You need to go to the hospital or see a doctor. You need to ask for directions somewhere. You need to make reservations at a hotel. So her entire year has built up in these scenarios or themes. So now she wants a final that brings all that together. So the students are creating a travel blog, if you will, where they have to, starting from nothing, make reservations to a hotel, make airplane reservations, create, dialogue between people, order food at a restaurant, go to a farmer's market, go visit the hospital while on the trip, all these things. So here's what she's doing. So this week, which is tomorrow, week 1 of 5, remember the 5th week is finals week. Starting tomorrow, she's having the students finish up their recipe book, because she's tying it into culture, where they looked at their culture, the culture that they're studying, and created a recipe book with that. But they're going to use that for finals. Remember, everything she's teaching is going to be used for finals. So week 2, which is the following week, she's now going to review all the vocabulary and themes and dialogues that she's been doing all year. She's going to review all that vocabulary because the students are going to need it for the final. Week 3, she's going to introduce the final project on a Monday. Hey guys, here's your project. Here's all the steps. It's going to take her a while, because it's a pretty thick project. Then they're going to start creating it on Tuesday, right? So they'll have throughout the week to start it. Week 4 is when she'll lose a couple days to Memorial Day, so the holiday, so students will only have a few days to kind of finalize that project. And then week 5 is where they're going to create their books. And so she has these binders. I highly suggest getting some. She's going to essentially create a thick book highlighting all of their travel, all the dialogue they've done, and she's going to take every student's recipe book or a piece of it and include it in the student's book that they're going to end the year with. So the students will have multiple recipes from this culture, including all the dialogue they've done all throughout the year, because now they can take that book and use it for their next level of language, because in the language she's teaching, they actually don't have a student textbook. And so this is their student textbook that they can bring to the next level. Now that's a great end of the year project. That's how she's doing it. My point to this, and then I'll show you what I do, and then we'll wrap this up. So the point to this is to make sure you create a final that reflects you, that reflects your personality, that reflects what you've been teaching. The students find it valuable and purposeful, and they can use it later on. And that 6 months from now, when the student throws it, throws it in the closet, cleans out the closet, and then 6 months from now finds it, goes, oh my gosh, I remember that teacher's class. Here's all the great stuff we did. So let me show you what I do quickly, and then I'll show you the science behind this. So my final project has always been this. I do a great finals day activity. Please watch that video if you haven't. It's amazing. Your students will love it. I do that to start off the class. On the previous Monday before finals day, we'll have made my class yearbook. And what I do is I have the students put all their creative writing throughout the year. We print it out. We stick it in one of these. And I would have taken a picture of the class picture with the students and made a great cover and put it in there. I have each student supply a copy of one of their pieces of writings that they want every student to have. So the students not only have all their creative writing throughout the year, they have a piece of everybody else's creative writing. We use that as a class yearbook that everyone can sign. And it does connect with my final activity. So before you say, Matt, I do an online, portfolio for my students' writing, this is much more engaging. Many people tend not to look back at their online portfolios. This is something, again, they can throw under their bed. And then 3 years from now, when going off to college, they can go, oh my gosh, I remember this. I remember this great class. I remember Joey. He's right here. And so it's a great project to do. Let me show you the science behind this real fast, and some more observational dialogue or commentary, I guess, if you will. When you do this type of a project, it does create authenticity and credibility to your instruction. It does leave your students with a great memory of your class. And it does, reflect your instruction and your goal and your focus for your class. It does allow students to reflect back. They'll have something to remember you and your class by when they find this years later. It is something that will apply and help them out in the future, or at least give them some great memories there. And I will say that it does support retrieval practice, which is a great way of teaching, where you're constantly kind of revisiting things you've done throughout the year so the students can remember it. I've linked an article of that supporting it. Also, research suggests, and I will say this for you researchers, people will sometimes say like, hey, science proves. Science and research doesn't prove. It suggests. Now, it can prove if it's 100% outcome, but science suggests that a person will create value in it more, will enjoy it, will find meaning in it if they're a part of the creation process. And so you as a teacher, the reason I say that, if you are the one creating your final project, not just giving something that someone else created, if you create your final project, you're going to enjoy it more. You're going to find more value in it. It'll be more meaningful. Your students are going to find more value and meaningful in it. Will find it more meaningful. And it's going to be a great way to end the year. So, and yes, I will say this as a final thing, and one more final thought. Yes, as a teacher, I know we're working so hard. We all are. And it is easier to just say, look, I'm going to give the district final as my final. It is easier, sure. But it may not be as meaningful and valuable to you and your students. And yes, that is more of a personal teaching philosophy. But I'm a big believer in that. I want the last memory that my students have of me and my class to be something amazing. And I will say this finally, and then we'll close this up. I am a big believer in this. It doesn't take much more effort to be that much better of a teacher, or to be much better as a teacher. So this, having something like this, having the students be able to leave with a great something tangible to leave the class with, is just an amazing, wonderful, learning experience. Thanks for watching.